Wednesday was supposed to be the big rapture day. A South African pastor named Joshua had a dream that the rapture was upon us. Never mind that Jesus said nobody knows when it'll happen and that it will be like a thief in the night. TikTok Christians went absolutely bonkers with it. Atheists get disappointed when a rapture fails, because not only did Christians not get raptured, but now we get to hear everyone rationalize why the South African pastor's dream didn't come true. So here's my Nostradamus prediction for you. There's going to be another rapture prediction in the near future, and that rapture will also fail because Jesus isn't real and he's not coming back. If you disagree with us, then please call in because the show starts now.
Yes. All right. What a wonderful time to be alive. I don't know if all of the Christians and believers are gone and we're just left here and we don't have to deal with them anymore, or the rapture just did not happen again. But we're going to crack into that today. So welcome, everyone. Today is September 28th, 2025. I am your host today, Jimmy Jr. Joining me is my friend, the talented Godless Engineer. Godless, how the hell are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. If I could just remember to unmute, that way I don't screw stuff up when it's my turn to do the monologue.
Well, I thought that was one of the signs that we were looking for. So I thought the rapture was actually happening. It was just a little late. When Godless has no voice, I figure, hey, this must be the time. But, we're still here again. So good to be with you. Glad that you're joining me on this Sunday. Glad that all of our viewers out there, wherever you may be in the world, are joining us this Sunday. You could be in church, but you're not. You're here with us in our church. And this is where we go over what Talk Heathen is all about. We are a live call-in show, and we do have open lines, so get them in at 512-991-9242. or from your computer at tiny.cc/call-th. And on Talk Heathen, we are open to all of your questions regarding God, religion, secular humanism, atheistic morality, cosmology, philosophy, science, history, life, the universe. We always have a host that can talk to at least a few of those things. And I know that I've got one here with me today who is the big brain in the room. Remember, we are a production of the Atheist Community of Austin, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the promotion of atheism, critical thinking, secular humanism, and the separation of religion and government. And today's a good day, because Talk Heathen is taking over AXP today. And we have kidnapped J-Mike, but we just want you to know that he is okay. He's okay, but he's just not going to be going on air until the Talk Heathen takeover is complete. So make sure that you not only watch this show today, but you tune into Atheist Experience this afternoon, and you can see some of the great Talk Heathen hosts doing their thing throughout the entire day. And on that note, don't forget to tune into the nonprofits Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central. And then, of course, we've got Truth Wanted, which I was on last week with Dan. We had a really good show. Truth Wanted, Friday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central. And with that, we are going to start our show. Godless, a.k.a. John. I like calling you Godless better. What's on your mind, man? What are you hoping to get into today?
Just a full range of stuff like, any kind of God questions or, one of my strengths is Christian origins. So where did Christianity come from? And then what's the historical reliability of, the Christian faith? And so those are things that I'm really interested in. So I'm always stoked to take those kinds of calls.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, we do have callers on the line. And with that, let's hop right into it. We are going to go to Chloe, she, her in Maryland. So Chloe, if I am reading this right, you want to know what our thoughts on post, quote unquote, transtheism are. And does God's existence even matter? Chloe, you're on with Jimmy and John, and I see that you're a theist. Is all my information about you correct so far?
That is correct.
Okay, great. Chloe. Well, it's nice to talk to you. All right.
It's wonderful to be here.
Excellent. Thanks for joining us. So what's on your mind?
So what's on my mind is that frankly, things have gotten a little hairy. If you haven't noticed, things are a little wild out there, and it's just, as a theist, it's made me question about whether or not the exact nature of God is as important as the nature of humans, because we've made a hash of it down here, and we need to figure things out. And I don't think that we're doing a very good job of it.
All right.
And that led me into a deep search into post-theism and in transtheism. And I was wondering, what's the atheist perspective on those two concepts? The idea that, there's something more important than God. There's something more important than the nature of the unseen spirits.
Well, I've got a few comments to make on that one. So thank you. I do just want to take a moment. So I think you touched upon transtheism there, the definition. So by transtheism, can you again reiterate what exactly is it you mean by that term?
Oh, it's just the idea that there are more important things than God.
Okay.
There are more important things than theism.
There are more important things than theism. So
that.
I'm going to address that in a second, but to your first point, things are getting hairy out there. I think I know what you're talking about, and I think I see where you're coming from. However, I would ask anybody making a claim like that, regardless of what we're talking about, whether it be geopolitics or religion or the happenings of the world, at some point in time throughout human history, that claim has always been valid, right? So for somebody out there, things are always hairy. For somebody out there, things are always chaotic and unfair. And I think that you're talking about certain events, maybe situations within the United States, perhaps even the world. But I think the world is a lot more dynamic than people give it credit for. So I want to make that point initially, and then say, I absolutely think that there are more things important than God. In fact, you using maybe human nature, human experience, absolutely more important than God. The way that we are all able to interact on this globe and, just share this space and be able to get along. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen well. It doesn't always happen. And since I think probably the beginning of humankind, it has never really happened to the extent that everybody would like to experience it. So, I think with that, I have to say, that's just it ends up being the nature of how we live and the way we live. And I think it's always been like that. But B, it's certainly more important to consider how we can make life better for each other. And I think that would include examining these God claims, these dogmas, these religions, and getting down to what we can actually support with evidence and with proof, and what we can't, and then differentiating our actions based on that. So before I kick it over to Godless Engineer, I'd just like to know what you have to say about that so far.
That's actually a nice reminder that things have always been a little hairy. It's kind of comforting to get back to recenter and re-understand that. But I'm more interested in what Godless Engineer has to say about this.
Okay. So for me, I think that beliefs drive actions. And if you have people that are believing in like divine command theory of God, or have these very magical beliefs in a deity that we don't know whether or not it exists. If you're talking about specific definitions of God, then they have very specific demands of people, which are not humanistic. And I think that the way forward for society is to be more humanistic in nature, which means that you have to shed those ideas of God and what God wants and needs. And I think that right now what we're seeing a lot in the modern day is there's a lot of people out there that are primarily focused on what they think God wants, and what they think God wants most of the time is going to align with what they personally want. And so they're just using this idea of God in order to sort of protect, their opinion. Like, oh, well, I think this because God commands, and because God is good, that means that my opinion is good. And so I think that by attacking the idea of God God and whether or not that idea of God is valid, I think that is the way that we move forward. So, I mean, I can understand where you're coming from, but at the same time, I think the only way to get to that point is by dismantling these very traditional ideas of God.
Yeah, well put. Chloe, what do you think about that?
Yeah, so a lot of that seems to be to dismantle like the authority structure that God gives you. So, you know, whatever humanistic tendency is underlying that urge to say that I am right, it is bolstered by that God belief of God. I am right because God says so. And to tear down that authority structure seems to be very important from your perspective because so much of it undergirds like a lot of what's been going on lately.
I don't want you. So without
accurate approach.
Well, Chloe, can I just ask for a little bit of clarification? And again, we don't want to get into politics per se. I mean, it'd be one thing to talk about like events worldwide or like a zeitgeist of a certain region and things like that. But I don't want to get into political parties and elections and you know, elected officials or living politicians. So without trudging through that stuff, can we get an idea of what you mean by things being hairy?
Yeah, we've got so like the issue with the rapture that was supposed to happen last week. We have a lot of people that were basically running on vibes and running off of this need for this thing to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And there's an underlying human need for that to happen. And where did that come from? Why are we like this? I don't understand it, and I'm trying to get a grip of it.
Yeah, so I've got a few thoughts on that, and then I'll see what you have to say, and we'll follow this format. I'll kick it over to my guest today, but you know, I think that there is a great deal of necessity in believing you have a connection in order to survive. So humans often say, or people often say, that human beings as a species are social animals, right? But it's not just like this need to be around other people, this need to interact that makes us social. It's our group where there's safety in numbers, and then that safety guarantees our survival. And we end up forming, you know, tribes. And you have this very innate, very instinctive tribalist way that you live your life. And religion is just one of those ways that we create in groups. And so I think to maintain that in group, right? And I'm talking on a very basic level, as far as human sustenance is concerned, as far as survivability of the species or survivability as the group is concerned. To maintain that in group, you kind of adhere to certain codes, social norms. A lot of them can be rooted in religion. Now, there are other things that create in groups. You know, there are political parties, I think, can be an example. I think different cultures have ways of applying themselves to a group, but religion certainly does that. And you have these dogmas that it's almost more destructive to the group to question the dogma than it is to just rationalize it out and keep it going. So, for example, for a rapture to not take place, well, let's rationalize that away instead of putting ourselves in a position to where our group loses its solidarity and our group kind of loses its legitimacy, right? A lot of good things are coming from this in-group, and we don't want it to dissolve. And so let's just kind of keep the mythology going. And I think that is how, again, on a very basic level, we start to see the development of dogmas and religions and how they are applied to society. Now, you started kind of down the path of you know, people wanting to remain in power and things like that. And yes, power structures certainly thrive on religion, but it's not always about power, although it often is. And so I think in addressing your response to how does, or your question to how do things like this come about, I would start there. And so what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, it's absolutely vibes on some level. It is absolutely that what will get me going to the next day. And what I find interesting, though, in this particular case is that it happened on TikTok, where people are atomized and not necessarily in groups. We're not talking about like a Facebook group that was saying this. It was just individual people atomized into this behavior, into this way of thinking. So like what was going on there? I don't know. And I'm trying to make sense of it.
Yeah. John, do you want to respond?
Yeah. So for me, I feel like this is just a symptom of what it takes to believe in these theistic ideologies. And I think the fact that people are easily convinced into like rapture beliefs and everything, I think that is a symptom of a larger problem, in that religion itself sort of trains people to accept these ridiculous claims without questioning. There's, if you look at the Bible starts off being very anti-intelligence, like anti-education. They don't want you asking questions. They don't want you knowing things that God knows. They want you to not, take of the tree of life or whatnot. They don't want you to be on the same level of God as far as like knowledge goes and all this other stuff. So it seems to me like if you create a population of people that you're constantly telling them not to question things, and you punish people that are part of that group for questioning things, then you're going to end up with people that just believe things because supposedly some guy had a dream about Jesus coming back soon. And so I think that still the way that we attack that is by dismantling the ideas that undergird it. And those ideas being fantastical and magical, I think are the source of the problem, which makes me kind of curious personally as to why you still consider yourself a theist. Like what convinces you to still believe in a God, because that kind of belief is the exact same kind of belief that we're talking about with the rapture stuff. I mean, I guess I simply am always confused by theists and why they continue to believe in their particular deities.
Yeah, excellent segue. And that brings me to where I'd like to go next. Chloe, I'll give you an opportunity to reflect on what Godless Engineer just asked you or just talked about. But then please take us into your walk through your belief, because I get the sense that maybe you're questioning your beliefs, and I'd like to know where you're coming from.
Yeah. My walk with theism basically started with trying to understand why do these stories, because I'm Norse pagan, I'm not Christian. Mm-hmm. Why do these stories keep resonating with me? Why do these gods keep resonating with me? Why does this aesthetic resonate with me? Why does this period of time keep resonating with me? And I don't have an answer to that. And I've been questioning the entire time, which is what led me into thinking about post-theism, which led me to thinking about transtheism, which led me to thinking about what's more important than the God claim. It's living our lives, but what does that mean? What does that look like? I'm full of questions, but no answers seem to be, there to fill in that gap of this is why you feel this way about, Odin, Freya, all these other gods, Loki, Thor, etc.
So when you say you're asking yourself, why do these things resonate with me?
Yeah.
My question immediately is, well, how did you become a Norse pagan? Is this something that you were raised on as a child, or did you find your way into it through some other means?
Oh, I found my way into it.
Okay. Yeah. So that I find that interesting. So you found your way into it later in life?
Yeah.
And were you
the short of it is that oh, sorry, I'll let you
No, please continue.
I was just going to say the very short of it is that you can tell by my pronouns, she, her, my voice is extremely clocky. I'm trans, and this is the only answer that I have, and it is incomplete, and it is what I have. It's that for whatever reason, there was a lot of gender feelings in this particular outlet of theism.
Hmm.
Something about goddess worship is really good for my gender dysphoria.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Hey,
and that's all.
so were you a Christian or a different faith before you found yourself into Norse paganism?
My dad tried to raise us Catholic, but as of like 12, 13 years old, he stopped trying.
Okay.
And then it wasn't until my mid-30s that I took up theism.
Yeah, so I find that interesting, and I do want to pass it over to Godless Engineer because I think that you have a good kind of background in the foundations of some of these religions. But from what I understand is that you do find a certain level of goddess worship present in the Norse pagan religions that is a little bit more prominent than it is in the Abrahamic religions. And so, it doesn't surprise me that you found some solace there. I will say that it's common for people to step away from Christianity and try a new religion, one that is less restrictive toward them. And we often find our way, people who leave Christianity because they've been told for so long that there's a thing out there, they just start looking for a new thing instead of saying, is there even a thing? And that's how, when I was in college, I decided, hey, I think Taoism is really, something that I believe in, and it's actually not Christianity. And then we've got other hosts that work with the atheist community of Boston, and just people in general who typically find their way into like an Eastern religion, Buddhism, Hinduism, on their road to deconstruction. So I think that, despite maybe the questions, maybe the chaos even that you might be experiencing with your beliefs, you're among friends and you're in good company. And I think that your path is not all that different. So I would like to kick it over to Godless and see what he's got to say.
Yeah, I guess I'm just trying to think about the conversation in total here because, Chloe, I feel like you called in initially being confused about why people would, believe in this rapture thing, and it seems to just all be vibes. But then when you describe why you're a Norse pagan, it seems like it's the exact same reason. Not to downplay the reason why you're Norse pagan or anything like that, or what that does for your dysphoria or whatnot. I'm not trying to downplay that, but I'm just wondering if maybe you can give some clarification as to what differentiates your reason for believing in the Norse gods versus the people that are believing in the rapture. Because to me, it seems like it's the exact same reason.
And that's actually why I'm calling, because I'm trying to understand that. Because I don't understand what the difference is. And that gives me a lot of pause as to why I'm doing what I'm doing. And it leads me to, continually deconstruct and look at what's going on all over and wondering, am I any better than anyone else? So you were actually quite spot on with that this is entirely about vibes. But if this is about vibes, then a lot of people are being very irresponsible with their vibes and how it, manifests in their actions in the real world.
Well, so let me ask you this. Do you believe in anything else purely based on vibes?
Well, I'm a huge fan of the Baltimore Ravens based on vibes. I mean,
okay.
And Andrew Mark Henry did a great video on the nature of fandom and how it intersects with religion. So like that is one of those things that has me continually questioning, like, why? And like, I don't think I'm ever going to get to a real actual answer. I just want to feel like I'm getting a little closer.
Right. Well, so for me, yeah. So for me personally, I don't go based off of vibes, like what feels right to me. I typically try to have evidence for the things that I believe. And if I don't have evidence to believe in something, then I just simply don't believe in it. There's no reason for me to believe in it. Like leprechauns, unicorns, anything of that nature. Like we don't have evidence that suggests that those things exist in reality. So there's no reason for me to actually believe in it. And I would think that, having sort of this vibe sort of feeling for like either a personality or a sports team or something like that, I feel like that's a little bit different in that those things change all the time. Like the person changes, their attitudes change, or their actions change. The sports ball team, they are going to change up their rosters and everything like that. So like you can still have good vibes about it and believe that they'll win and everything like that, even if you don't have good reasons to believe that they'll win. Like these are pretty innocuous beliefs that have the possibility of like completely changing. But when we're talking about God, we're talking about something that is supposed to be just like a fact about reality, right? And so that's not going to change. Like the Norse god myths, typically like whatever you're believing in now, like as far as like the mythology behind that, that's not going to change. If you don't have like evidence for those gods now that actually shows that they exist, then what's the purpose in believing in them? I think that you can find different ways to, to find that kind of fulfillment that you're currently feeling with the Norse pagan religion. I think that you could definitely find that in other ways that are not going to be, I hesitate to use this word, but deluding yourself into thinking about it through religion. And instead you can base it on something very tangible and something very real here in reality.
Oh, no doubt. But the thing is that I've been searching for like 20 years for that thing. And then like, I found something. And all it asked me to do was be silly every so often doing ritual or doing prayer. So I really didn't consider the trade-off to be so bad, because like I still don't know about the existence of my gods. But what I do know for an absolute certain is that they inspire me to get up into the world and get going and get moving. And like epistemically, that's all I've got, and that's what I go off of. It's not whether or not they exist. They exist to some degree, like Mario exists from Super Mario Brothers. We can point to a sprite or a 3D model and say that's Mario, but is he real? Different question.
I'm not,
right?
And I think in conjunction with some of the things that John just said, like I don't get the feeling that although you call yourself a theist, that you actually believe in the gods that are part of the Norse pagan religion. I think that at least what I'm hearing, and please, I'm not putting words in your mouth, but maybe the stories motivate you, right? Maybe the ideas of some of these gods and their power motivate you, but I'm not getting the sense that you actually believe in them, that you came across these accounts of these gods and you said, well, that is provable. There are good reasons to believe that this is exactly how the universe is structured. And this is a fact of life. I think that when you were being raised as a Catholic and your father was trying to raise you as a Catholic, definitely was implementing the idea that God is a fact of life. But then you moved on and you had a little bit more autonomy and you could make decisions about how you live your own life. And perhaps this Norse pagan affiliation is not all that different from the way that you see the Baltimore Ravens, because there is an in-group that you can be a part of. You can relate and socialize with people who follow Norse pagan traditions, even if the only purpose is to be silly, or even if the only purpose is to say, yeah, we're all from Baltimore. There are social constructs there that are very important to people and give them a feeling of legitimacy that I think that maybe you have found, but I'm not getting the sense that you think this is a legitimate fact, to John's point. And so that, to answer your question, is what I think makes you different, because you say, well, I've got my own religion. I'm not a Christian, but I'm not claiming that the rapture is an event that we should all take seriously, but I do have my own stuff. And what makes me any different? Well, the thing that makes you different is that you admittedly call it silly, and that you're just kind of there along for the ride. So I would posit that on you and ask you where you stand there.
Oh, that's an absolutely valid point. The point I would say about whether or not I actually believe is a very personal one, and it is about like because like I didn't grow up with theism. I didn't grow up with this idea that God is a thing, and I'm still trying to grapple with the idea of God's existing. Like, what does it mean? What does it look like? You know, what does the God of the gaps argument really mean? I mean, does Jesus really get us any closer to quantum gravity or any other mysteries that we have about the universe? Not really, but it does give us answers about what do we do with our lives, you know? And like, maybe it's been so many years of being a skeptic and so many years of living in that world that maybe I'm just being too outwardly cautious about what I actually believe, which is that whatever it is that I'm praying to is bringing me, you know, immense comfort. It is bringing me, you know, motivation. It is bringing me these things. Maybe I'm being kind of a coward by not fully buying in and saying, yes, this is real.
John, you want to weigh in?
That's not, I don't think this may not be the time or place for that conversation.
Well, I mean,
I
don't think that I don't think that you're being a coward for not buying fully into it. I mean, I think that as social animals, and as we have seen in different studies of other great apes, that ritualistic sort of practices are prevalent even in our great ape cousins. So, like, doing those kinds of things can be very therapeutic for us and everything. I guess I consider myself an anti-theist. So I think that any belief that you have that doesn't align with reality is potentially going to harm either you or other people. And so I feel like any kind of belief in something that doesn't that we don't have good evidence for to believe in, I think that could eventually end up harming you. And I would just caution, you know, if you continue to like do those rituals and everything like that, just be cautious about, you know, what that causes you to believe or what that causes you to do. Because, you know, as we see with like Christian nationalists now, you have people that are very easily led down a certain path that leads to very harmful beliefs. And I just don't want to see that happen to you. I don't know if that makes sense.
Oh, it does. It absolutely does. And it's one of those things that's been on my mind because of, you know, 20 years of watching, you know, stuff like the aforementioned rapture stuff happen over the last 20 years and, you know, seeing all sorts of different pitfalls of theistic thought and belief and motivation has led me very much to be skeptical of my own thoughts, motivation, etc. But I think that the answer I'm ultimately looking for is to ultimately just embrace who and what I am and just get to work and do in this world as I seem fit. And whether or not that has positive or negative effects, we'll figure it out later.
Well, I don't think that your perspective here is all that unhealthy. In fact, I wouldn't call it that at all. I think introspection, checking ourselves on our preconceived notions regularly is actually a very good thing to do. If you want to have, you know, these relationships to the Norse pagan religion, but also, you know, kind of identify, like John said, you know, what's good for you, what's bad for you, and maybe regularly just kind of check, you know, who am I? What is it that I believe? What are my values? And constantly remind yourself of what those things are, and change your mind when it no longer represents you. I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. I don't think you should be stressed out about that at all. In fact, I think you're on a path to being kind of very happy with who you are, and I hope that that's what you're getting. You know, I'm going to make a little joke here, but I like to go to Renaissance fairs. I do the whole dress up and drink the ale and eat the turkey legs, but I don't really think that we should all be, you know, serfs on a fiefdom. And I don't praise a king, you know. I mean, these things are kind of fun. They're social. I don't really believe in them, but I like to do them. And I don't mean to like I'm not trying to sound like I'm knocking your religion by downplaying it in any way, but you exploring with the kind of the things that make you feel good and, you know, regularly evaluating yourself on some of the feelings that you have, perfectly fine. And so I think that this is a good place to have that conversation, contrary to kind of what you just said before. And I'm glad that you keep questioning things. So what are your thoughts there?
That's actually a huge relief, because you can tell yourself this is healthy so many times, but my therapist says that we are actually owed a shred, if not a lot, of external validation to our thoughts and to our claims. Maybe not a lot, but to a certain degree, we are owed, being told that yes, this is actually right. This is the right thing to do. From someone other than the inside, because from what I can tell from the inside is that, I'm being driven by vibes to do silly things, and it's potentially a waste of time, maybe, who knows, but it's bringing me, comfort in life. It's bringing me clarity. It's bringing me focus. It's bringing me, purpose. Well, other than making sure that I'm not doing harm to myself or others, really, should I be this hard on myself in questioning? I should be questioning, no doubt, but to what degree, I think I need to figure that out with my therapist.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, so the best thing that I can do at this point is just direct you towards like the Secular Therapy Project. It's seculartherapy.org. And I know that you said that you've already got a therapist and everything like that. But I guess I don't feel qualified to really give you a lot of good feedback here. That's why I direct you that way. But I'm just now recalling that you did talk about having a therapist and talking to a therapist. I think that as long as you continue to, question your beliefs and question, the conclusions that you're coming to, and outside of the theistic belief set, if you require evidence in order for you to come to some kind of conclusion or believe in some kind of conclusion, I think that is the better way to navigate through things.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
Absolutely.
It's just I think the question that I don't have an answer for, that I'm really looking for, is where are the vibes coming from? And they're clearly coming from within the house, but where exactly, I don't know. And that's something I should be working with a professional on, I think. I think this is the end of this conversation, because I'm not sure where else we can go with this. But
yeah,
thank you so much for letting me.
I think it's the vibes. If they're being translated as you being comfortable and you feeling good, perfectly fine, perfectly normal, and probably I wish more people had those vibes. But as we end this call, I just want to remind you, the greatest minds out there are constantly asking people to tear down their preconceived notions. Scientists, scholars, they put out work, they do experiments. Myself, I was a military intelligence analyst for a while, and I would have to come up with kind of these courses of action and then find ways to tear them down. And it's a good thing to get to the truth. So I think that you're doing great. I'm happy that you're talking to somebody. Nothing wrong with that. In fact, most people would probably encourage you to do that. So without further ado, I'm going to let you go, Chloe, and thank you so much for giving us a call today. That was a really good conversation. We do have more callers on the line, but we are going to go and do some things that we need to do. All right. And I want to talk about our TikTok / Patreon benefits. So, crew, if you could go ahead and throw up that wonderful graphic we have. I want to remind everybody that Talk Heathen is live on TikTok Tuesday and Thursday evenings. So you should definitely go check us out. Tuesdays at 3 p.m. Central, where Richard Gilliver, our wonderful producer, takes to the airways and has conversations with people. And then I, for the most part, will be there on Thursday nights at 8 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern, so 7 p.m. Central. And if you can't make it, the recordings are available on Patreon. So follow us on Patreon, get over there, check out Talk Heathen, subscribe, share, and join the Talk Heathen community. And with that, we want to go to the people that make this all possible. And so I want to pull up the crew cam. Folks, you need to take a look at all these wonderful individuals, right? Check out the crew making it happen today. We got call screeners, we got audio, video people making it work. And I want to talk about somebody special today, and that is our good friend Eli. Eli, not only does Eli run Greg, our producer's personal errands like laundry and getting coffee and things like that, but Eli over here is yeah, there he is. Eli is the head honcho right now for our show, The Nonprofits. Eli is a video dude that helps with all the shows. Eli helps us make it work. My good friend, who I've hung out with in person and can't wait to do so again. So thanks, Eli, for stepping up and being part of the team and making this all possible. And with that, we're going to jump into another call. We have got Anton from West Virginia. And Anton has a question about Christianity.
Hi.
Was it copied from Mithraism? Ooh, good one. Anton, go ahead. What's your question?
I'm an atheist because I figured out by a study that Christianity was borrowed heavily from older religions, starting with Mithraism and a lot of other ones. But believer told me that there was new evidence that it was the reverse way, that Mithraism actually copied from Christianity. Which one is the truth? Which one copied from the other one?
So I know, hold on, John, I know that you can speak to this. So before you do, I would like to give my understanding and then have John tear it down for me. So this is the way I understand it, okay? That Mithraism was one of those religions that did in fact, and I say fact because that's the way I understand it. I'm going to have John come up and give his expertise. But the way I understand it is Mithraism was born out of an older religion called Zoroastrianism. And around this time, while many religions did have an afterlife, all of these afterlives, let's say in the Greek religion or some of the Mesopotamian religions, these afterlives were rather uneventful, okay? Sometimes it was just where everybody went and it was like a dark place where nothing really happened. Other times it was a mirror of society. So if you were of high status and high influence, then you maintain that in the afterlife. And the same thing if you were poor and unimportant. But Mithraism, the way I understand it, was something that offered a salvation, but only to a certain select group of people: soldiers, gladiators. Those were the kind of people who were slaves, people that were going to die early or die, a short life and not have a very good life, found salvation through Mithraism. And so that's what I understand. And then Christianity, in its nascency, borrowed some concepts, but was able to spread those concepts not just to soldiers and gladiators and slaves, but to everyone. And that is where I leave you. John, please tell me how I did.
Not too bad, I guess. But okay. So the key thing to understand here is that it's not copying. Right. They're not copying things. What it's called is syncretism. There's a syncretism between Hellenistic ideas and mystery cults. And this occurs in various different forms. Mithraism is just one form of syncretism between Hellenistic ideas and Persian ideas. And then you've got like the mysteries of Addis and Cybele. That was a syncretism between Hellenistic and Anatolian ideas. The mysteries of Isis and Osiris was a syncretization between Egyptian and Hellenistic ideas. Then Christianity comes along and it's a syncretism between Hellenistic ideas and Jewish ideas. And so the reason why you might be seeing connections between like Mithraism and all these other mystery cults that were going around at the time is because they were based on the same kind of skeletal structure that mystery cults are based on. And they're also using Hellenistic ideas from the Mediterranean around that time in order to build out their own custom versions of these mystery cults. And so while they're not strictly copied, they're syncretized, and with syncretism comes differences. There are going to be differences between Mithraism and the mysteries of Addis and Cybele. There's going to be differences between both of them and Isis and Osiris, and of course with Christianity. And so if you think about it in a straight plagiarism or in a straight copying sort of way, you're probably going to get a lot of pushback. But if you say that it was syncretized, in that a new religion, Christianity, was created by merging the beliefs of Hellenistic ideas and these mystery cults that were out there, the basic skeletal structure of these mystery cults, you merge them together and you end up getting, Christianity. Because there's a lot of elements of Christianity that come from Zoroastrianism, the burning hell, the adversary, or the cosmic, villain of God that we know now as Satan. All of that was sort of developed from syncretizing these mystery cults, multiple different mystery cult ideas with Hellenistic ideas in order to produce these things. So I would caution against saying, oh, Christianity is a copy of Mithraism. It's more like Christianity is its own unique thing that was cobbled together from multiple different sources in the Mediterranean area that were influencing religious beliefs at that time.
Fantastic. Anton, what do you say?
Which one? Okay, that kind of explained it, but I just wanted to know which one came first.
Well,
Mithraism.
Right. Mithraism was definitely first before Christianity. Christianity didn't develop until like the 1st century CE, at least in the form that we know it in. So Mithraism would have definitely been syncretized first, and then Philo of Alexandria and Paul the Apostle were busy syncretizing Judaism with Hellenistic ideas.
Okay, thank you.
Is that it?
That answered my question. Yeah, that's it, sir.
Okay, great. Well, on that, I mean, there are a lot of similarities. So, that was fantastic. I love talking about this stuff, and it's well, you make a good point. Like, it's not just a matter of somebody found this religion and they took it and added to their own religion. It's a matter of what were the common cultural norms of the time, and then what kind of ideas were being exchanged. People weren't just isolated and fixated in one location. There was a massive, extensive trade network covering the Mediterranean, Africa, the Near East, all the way into Asia, right? And so it's not a surprise that a lot of these ideas not only passed through those channels, but also kind of supplanted themselves across different cultures and developed a little bit differently, but still borrowed things. It's no surprise to me that Zeus and Yahweh, very similar, right? Storm gods had a son that was half god, half human. Both of them traveled to the underworld, and as luck would have it, they just were able to kind of keep living, right? Even after traveling to the underworld. And so make no mistake that across the region, these things were developing and coexisting and borrowing from each other. And some could make the argument getting better, which is why they became more popular. I don't know, but it wasn't just due to trade. Of course, this stuff was burned and enslaved and murdered into people as well. So there's a factor there you have to consider. But fantastic conversation. Anything else to add, John?
I don't have anything else to add other than I'm wondering, Anton, do you believe that Jesus existed in history?
No way.
Okay.
There's no proof at all that he existed. Even the Shroud of Turin was proven to be a fake. I'm a total atheist.
I'm glad that Anton's still here. I thought he hung up. I thought he hung up on us. Cool. So Anton, were you ever a believer?
Yeah, we started going to church when I was like maybe 13. Then when I moved out at 18, I started questioning why the Jews don't believe in Jesus. So I called a synagogue, and she invited me to come over to one of their services and ask questions if I had any questions. So I started coming over there, and I started asking questions, and then I converted to the Jewish side, and she got replaced as a rabbi because they didn't believe in female rabbis. So I got mad and started going to a different synagogue where I converted completely to Judaism. And the rabbi had made it flat out that Judaism was made up by the scribes, and that Moses didn't write the Torah. So I just left. So I said I was wasting my time and studied science and religion and realized the hard way that none of the Bible people, especially Jesus, existed. So I've been an atheist ever since then.
Nice. Well, that is a fascinating story. You know, I want to make a recommendation to you, if I will, if you don't mind. So you sound like somebody that would be interested in this stuff. So I listen to a podcast called The Ancients, and they talk a lot about ancient mythology and ancient politics and culture and how they're all intertwined. And the most recent episode is a fantastic account of how the god Inanna from Sumerian culture made it all the way into Christianity and Hellenistic folklore as well. And I think that if you go back and check that out, you will see parallels to what John just talked about, and to maybe what I mentioned about Zeus and Yahweh. And I think you'll find it incredibly interesting, and it'll answer some questions for you as well. So. If you have nothing else, that's all I got. I appreciate you calling, Anton. John?
Yeah, I was just... okay. What do you got?
Is it on YouTube, The Ancients? Because I'm looking it up. I can't find it.
No, wherever you get your podcasts, you might find it. I find it's a helpful resource to just kind of, stay consistent on some of these mythologies and concepts. Because if you don't practice it every day, it's easy to forget. Pardon me?
Final thing. I get my podcast on StreamYard. But anyway, final thing. Is it true that there's evidence that we're living in a simulation? Elon Musk said that we might be. I'm a fan of his.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's no evidence that we're living in a simulation. What if I recall, that guy, he comes to that conclusion just because for whatever reason, he rates the possibility of us being in base reality to be incredibly low. So it's more likely that we're not. But I don't see any reason why, he doesn't give any kind of Bayesian analysis for his particular conclusion there. But as far as whether or not we're in a simulation, this kind of touches on hard solipsism, and I don't see the benefit in discussing hard solipsism when we're talking about this, because regardless of whether or not we're in a simulation, we're all faced with this reality that is constructed in a certain way, that we all interact with in a certain way, and we're bound by the laws that we have been able to discern about this reality. So whether or not we're a simulation, I don't think that really matters, because it's ultimately not going to change our investigation of our reality.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had, sir.
Nice. All right, Anton. Hey, thank you for being a caller. Thank you for being part of the team. I hope you'll keep checking us out. Go ahead and check us out on Patreon. Follow us on TikTok. And that was a good call. So, with that, I want to bring up our buddy Aaron. Can we bring up our buddy Aaron? There he is. The wonderful Aaron Jensen.
Hello, everybody. YOLO.
Hey, so thanks for joining us. I want to delve into the topic that we wanted to discuss this week. Actually, John, it's cool that you're here this week and you were here last week, because this week's topic is kind of related, and it was essentially born out of the I think topic that you and Christy were talking about last week. But you talk about the nature of Jesus, the level of mythology versus reality that can be applied to him, and then you get into the basis for Christianity in a sense, or the thing that makes it unique, this rapture. And so I kind of wanted to talk about that. John, can you give us a rundown of how people should, generically speaking, like what's the best way, what's the easiest way to understand the rapture?
Well, so the rapture, I guess the easiest way, are you talking about like what happens in the rapture or the theology surrounding the rapture? Because like,
what happens in the rapture?
Well, supposedly everybody's going to like, I guess, disappear and like basically float up into heaven. They're going to get called home by God and everybody's going to get taken up into heaven. And that's the point when this heaven and earth are going to pass away and God's going to recreate everything in a new heaven and earth. That's what Jesus actually talks about in, I believe it's Matthew, somewhere in there, when he talks about how not a jot or tittle of the Old Testament law is going to go away until this heaven and earth pass away. He's talking about this end time stuff, this apocalyptic sort of view of things. And so, I mean, essentially everybody's, that's like Judgment Day, right? From the Terminator series. It's essentially Judgment Day where everybody's going to get judged and are going to get led into heaven. There's multiple different ideas around this. Like some people think that everybody that has died, since Jesus came are sort of stuck in this purgatory, stuck waiting outside of the pearly gates, waiting for Judgment Day, and others think that Judgment Day just happens whenever you die. And so like there's a lot of different theologies surrounding it, but I think the most important thing as far as the rapture goes is that when Jesus was talking in the Gospels, and what Paul understood specifically was that the rapture was to happen within their lifetime.
Yes,
so within their lifetime it was supposed to happen, and that's the original context of it.
So I actually want to come back to that. And that was the thing. I tell you, when I was a young history major in college, and I took the Bible literature course, and I came across that. It blew my mind, and thus began my deconstruction. Or I should say it kind of started before that, but once I heard that and other things like that, like, hey, did you know that it wasn't actually Satan in the Garden of Eden? My mind was blown, right? I want to come back to that because I want to skip to Aaron, who has a very interesting story of his own. But Aaron, your experience with understanding the rapture is not like other Christians, is it? And so can you give us a little bit of your background and tell us what was different between the way that you were brought up in your religion versus what typical other Christians might understand the rapture to be?
Yeah, I was raised Mormon, and Mormons don't use the words the rapture. The rapture is something that happens after a distinct set of events that usher in Jesus coming back again, right? So, and there's going to be wars and rumors of wars, and there's going to be a huge war where all the nations are fighting against Israel, and there's a major battle of Armageddon on the plains around Jerusalem, and then finally Jesus will come back and he'll cleave the Mount of Olives in two, and when he comes back, that's when people will come up into heaven to meet him as he descends down into the earth. And I think that would be the Mormon equivalent of the rapture. And so when people say, oh, the rapture is going to happen, I said, well, no, because all the other shit that's supposed to lead up to it hasn't happened, right? Because it's all very distinct. In Mormon theology, it's all very distinct events. Like two of the apostles of the church will be literally in Jerusalem while the battle is raging, preaching the gospel and fighting against and doing miracles, and they'll be killed in the streets and they'll be laying dead in the streets for 3 days. And that's when Jesus will also come back. So yeah, it's a little more involved in Mormon theology and tied to very specific events that lead up to it.
Yeah, and that also, requires some dissection when you talk to members of different Christian cults, because they, or maybe not just a cult, but different Christians in general. And you often say, well, there's 40,000 different Christian religions, and there's 3 million Christians, so there's 3 different versions of God, right? And 3 different understandings of 3 million different understandings of Christianity. But some people say that those things are happening right now. Others say they're not. We've heard them all kind of all world events being translated into that before. And so, yeah, there's a definitely a level of investigation that is required. To what level are these things happening? To what are they not? We've had callers on Talk Heathen who call in and say, hey, well, there are wars and rumors of wars. We're like, okay, well, just like our first caller, when has there not been wars and rumors of wars?
Can you be more specific?
Yeah, right. And that lack of specificity is actually really beneficial to religion. And that brings me back to the point that John made. So, yeah, what did it say? What did Jesus say? So I have it pulled up. Truly, I tell you, this generation will certainly not pass away until all these things have happened. Heaven and earth will pass away. My words will not pass away. But then there was the other one. Verily, I say unto you, there are some standing here who will not taste death till they see the Son of Man coming. And, the most literal translation of that being Jesus is coming back soon. And I think that was, the way I always understood it. And John, correct me if I'm wrong, or tell me if you have a different interpretation. But the way I understood that was definitely anti-Roman propaganda, like the Hebrew cult at the time writing these things was going to have the last laugh. And so, what do you can you expand on that?
Yeah, I mean was it Revelation that is to be like sort of this end time sort of prophecy given by Jesus after he had resurrected and everything. I mean, that was definitely anti-Roman stuff, and it was definitely directed at a particular point in time. And I want to say that it was directed around the events, concerning Nero. I want to say it's been a while since I've looked at the Revelation stuff, but it was definitely anti-Roman sort of propaganda that was supposed to, coincide with what the Jews had always been taught by God or by their scriptures about the salvation of people. Because obviously when Jesus came and he eventually died on the cross and everything like that was a type of salvation that was provided. But the Jews and the Jewish Christians at the time were really looking for a more permanent salvation in the here and now. And so that's why you've got the Apostle Paul and you've got the Gospels that are treating this as if, it's going to happen soon because, that's what Jesus said would happen, or that this is what is the traditional teaching of the Jewish people when the Messiah comes back to provide the salvation and God decides to save the remnant, right, of the Jewish people. That's just what's going to happen. Like it's kind of like the final, salvation that's to be given. And so that's why you have all these things leading up to it. And then, of course, you've got all of the justifying of why things haven't happened yet, or you've got people playing with numbers in the Bible in order to figure out when these things are supposed to happen. Because this is not, obviously, the first time it was supposedly supposed to be the rapture. There was a great disappointment in like 1844 or something like that, and then you just got one failure after another. And I think even like the Mormons, I want to say, have had end time sort of predictions, as well as like Jehovah's Witnesses have in the past. And so it's just like everybody's trying with buckshot in order to figure out when it's going to happen, because they can't just accept the fact that God says you won't know the day or the time it's going to come like a thief in the night, and it's just going to take you by surprise. I do have an interesting rapture story, though, that I've told elsewhere. But basically, when I was a kid, I remember one morning, it was a Saturday morning or something like that, I turned on the TV and I had been watching like TNT the night before. I don't know if anybody remembers that channel, but I turned on TNT.
Shawshank Redemption channel, right?
Yeah,
it's also known as the Shawshank Redemption channel. Yeah.
And
the Law and Order channel.
I had it on that channel when I went to sleep the night before. Turned it on the next morning and Left Behind was on, but it was Left Behind right at the point where they're doing all the newscasts where like everybody has disappeared. So me not having watched any news whatsoever because I'm a teenager, I'm like, oh shit, did the rapture happen? I go around the house. I'm trying to look for everybody. Nobody's home because it's just me. And so I'm like, oh shit, it happened.
Oh my God.
And like I come back and I look at the TV and it's like, of course, Kirk Cameron comes up there. I'm like, oh, it was just just a movie. Okay,
You got War of the Worlds, man.
Yeah, I know. It happened.
So that's funny. So two things on that. One, in 1996, right before. We have a call coming up, by the way. So we are gonna caller. If you can hear us, we're gonna get to you in a second. But we gotta close this out here. So in 1996, when what's that movie? Independence Day was coming out. Right, it was a big deal. Big deal. Like this was going to be a blockbuster, which it was. But before it was actually released, our local news channel did like this fake story about how aliens were invading. So they set it up like a real news story, and they showed a picture of a UFO over New York City, a clip from the movie, and over the White House, and it was nighttime, and my dad turned on the TV, and he called my brother and I, and he goes, "Come in here, look at this," and he tricked us big time, but we were scared shit. And then this general gets on like the podium, and it says the Pentagon, and he starts briefing, and it was the actor that played the general. And my mom comes in and goes, "Wait a minute, isn't that guy an actor?" And then they showed the clip. They showed the clip of the UFO blowing up the White House, and my dad was laughing, and I was like, "You son of a gun!" But I was scared shit. But so I do want to close this out, but I want to get to Aaron real quick. Aaron, so on that note, John brings up, different kind of interpretations, predictions that the Mormons or other sects might have. And in your experience growing up as a Mormon, what can you speak to on maybe some of these predictions or some of the requirements that you had to adhere to, maybe in order to be one of the saved? How were you as a Mormon different or better off than the other sects that surrounded you?
I don't think that the Mormons, I didn't really get a sense of doom and gloom and like you're going to go to hell and you're going to suffer. Mormons don't really believe in a hell like that. And the second coming, I never heard any of the church leaders ever give a date on, oh, he's coming back on this date. They were always very careful to just make it general. You would read prophecies from some of the earlier prophets in the church about, oh yeah, Jesus isn't going to come back until New York burns to the ground and Boston floods and other just stuff like that. Stuff that's going to happen probably could happen randomly anyway, right? Yeah,
vague, right? Allows them to weasel their way out of an explanation. What
was crazy about the Mormon churches, they also have these things called patriarchal blessings. So every geographic region of the church is broken down into stakes, and each stake has like 10 congregations. Well, each stake has what's called a patriarch. And at some point in your life, usually when you're as a teenager, you go to this patriarch and they give you a blessing, which is basically personal scripture from God. And it tells you like about your life and what you should do with your life and what God wants you to do with your life and what's going to happen. And so many of those patriarchal blessings have people saying you'll be alive when Jesus comes again. Your kids will be alive and when the second coming happens. And it hasn't happened yet.
I'd be interested to know how they get themselves out of that one. And to John's point, you end up starting to have to play with numbers, even for the promo for this week. For the promo for this week, in the comments on YouTube and Facebook, everybody was saying, well, actually one day for us is 1,000 years for God, or 1,000 days for God. And it's like, oh, well, funny. I don't remember ever hearing that until you had to start explaining your way into making sense, which you definitely have to take some artistic license into getting there.
It reminds me of the prophecy that Jesus said, surely someone in the sound of my voice will be alive when I come back. And in Mormon theology, there's a whole apologist explanation for that, where one of the apostles, John, actually never did die and he's still alive, right? He's been alive ever since.
Right. Yeah.
And so we're waiting for John to die so that Jesus can come back. That's a hoop right there.
Hey, John, you muted.
Yeah, I got it.
Oh, okay.
There's this interesting show called, I want to say it's called Forever. And it was only like one season long, but like one of the big twists at the end of the season that it was, is that the guy, he can't die. Like he like will jump off a building or something like that, and he just pops up somewhere else and he's alive again, right? We don't know why. Well, it turns out he was Lazarus. And so like God resurrected him, or Jesus resurrected him, and he can no longer die. And so like every time he supposedly dies, he just manifests like in this river or something like that. And it's so crazy to consider that particular part of the theology.
We can keep going on. I've got so many anecdotes and like experiences from being a child in like confirmation and communion class as a Lutheran, where people said weird shit and predicted all the end times. And I I'll have to save that for another day. We got to get moving, and we're going to keep Aaron up, actually. So, crew, let's keep Aaron up. We're going to go to another caller. But first, before we do that, I am going to acknowledge our top 5 patrons. So we talked earlier about Patreon on the show, and we do have people that follow us on Patreon who donate to us, who support us, and we are totally thankful for you. Extremely appreciative of you being part of the Talk Heathen community. I want to list them out. Number 1, Oops, all singularity. 2, Dingleberry Jackson. 3, Kalevi Helvetti. 4, J.A. Carlton. 5, Moldred D. Malcontent. I love that. That is like a supervillain name. And then honorable mention, Teresa Ronning Allen. Thank you so much to everybody, again, who gives to us on Patreon. Please consider supporting us. Go check us out at tiny.cc/Patreon-TH. And then we have super chats. I want to get through these super chats. Oh, man. Thank you to everybody who's supporting us. And then we've got a caller. So caller, we got Josh on the line. Stick around. We're coming to you next. But here we go. Ann Johnson, $5. Happy Sunday to the cast, crew, and audience at Talk Heathen. Thank you so much. And Josh L., God commanded thee to call in. Maybe that's Josh who we have on the line. I don't know. Josh L., my friend Dark Wolfie said, none of you listen to God's command to call in and refute these atheists. He will not rapture until there is a good convo. So, all right, cool. So Josh gave us
That's
$2.
what he's waiting for?
Yeah. Yeah, people are waiting for the rapture. No, they've got to call first if they want the rapture. That's actually the 8th sign. So Jesus told you there were 7, but there's another one. And then we have Ann Johnson again, $2. I tried to get raptured, but they threw me back. And I think they threw us all back. If the rapture did indeed happen on the 23rd, and we just don't know because we're still here, we've all been thrown back. And on that note, we are going to go to Josh, him in Georgia, who wants to discuss the existence of a historical Jesus. So, Josh, you're on with Jimmy, you're on with John, and you're on with Aaron. How the heck can we help you?
How the heck can we help you? Well, that's a loaded question, but I'm just merely here just to debate the idea that a historical Jesus existed, not the mythical, water into wine, walking on water one, and just rapid firing. If we are to believe that Josephus's accounts are true, he speaks of many Iesus we talk about in Greek, right? Iesus being the literal formation of Jesus in his writing. So there's the Iesus son of Ananias, Iesus son of Zacchaeus, Iesus son of Gamaliel. Like he speaks of many Iesuses or Jesuses, right? So I believe we can be pedantic Persephone here and agree at least a Jesus existed, but probably not the mythical.
Yeah, but I think that this would actually be sort of like a reference fallacy, because we're not actually referencing just a general Jesus. There's a very specific Jesus that we're actually talking about when we're saying Jesus, didn't exist. We're not saying that a person named Jesus didn't exist. We're talking about whether or not the Jesus that, not necessarily the magical form of Jesus that the New Testament claims, but just like a Jesus that inspired those tales, right? And typically people go with a minimal historical Jesus. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I just think, well, yes, obviously, and I will play guilty to the charges laid before me. I'm just being specific. There's possibly, yes, on paper, alleged Jesuses, but not the one we're basically pointing towards. You're right. So
right. But would you right. So, I mean, would you say that Christianity is based on a historical figure named Jesus, or do you have a different view of that?
No, I would. I mean, that is clearly the entire sales pitch, right? That somehow, obviously, that this specific historical Jesus existed, which I don't agree with. The specific historical Jesus that the accounts allege.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring up Jesus Ananias, Ben Ananias in Josephus's work, because I think that the story told of how Jesus ben Ananias in Josephus's account dies is actually a good skeleton for the passion of Jesus in the Gospel of Mark. There's a lot of different parallels that are the same in both, and I think that whoever authored Mark probably used Josephus in order to generate his whole story there about Jesus's passion.
Yeah, there are. So that's where he was warning Jerusalem before its fall, right? So that was that specific Jesus, and then the other one, which is the Jesus of Gamaliel, was a high priest, and there was some story about the fall of the temple or something to that effect as well. So there's a lot of referencing involved.
Right, but also with the Jesus ben Ananias story, there's also the fact that the Romans are the ones that killed Jesus ben Ananias in his attack when he was attacking or whatnot.
Right.
And I think that was probably like the seed thing that had the Gospels actually having the Romans crucify Jesus instead of having the Jews do it, because that's one of the things that's kind of weird in the story of Jesus as presented in the Gospels, is that Jesus makes all these allusions to the Jews being his downfall and how the Jews have turned away from God and the Jews are not choosing God and all this other stuff. And he even in some of the later Gospels, Jesus actually presents a parable of there's like a grape, I want to say grape farmer. That's not what they're called. I can't remember what they're called right now, but it's a story of like a parable of like this guy who, has these people taking care of his grape orchard or whatever, grape fields, and they don't take care of them, and they actually send people away. They totally reject the owner of it and what he wants and everything. And then finally the grape orchard fields father Vineyard. Thank you, vineyard. Yes. The vineyard owner sends his son to go and deal with it, and they actually kill his son. And so, like, this is Jesus trying to explain how the Jews are going to be the ones to ultimately kill Jesus, but then you got the Romans that kill Jesus at the hands of the Jews. But I think the reason why that they have the Romans kill Jesus is probably because of something to do with that Jesus ben Ananias story.
Yeah, I would agree with the reference or engagement, quote unquote, of that story as an additional lore in the text for the Christo Jesus idea. So feel free to send me below to all of the watchers.
So Josh, is your claim that the fact that there are multiple accounts of someone named Jesus cancels out an actual historical Jesus for the foundation of Christianity?
I would say for now we have no direct, because the other problem is that there's also questions about the legitimacy of Josephus's writings and other writings like Tacitus, etc. So I would say there's no external evidence that would still prove that. To me, it puts you in a good reason for belief. Personally, it's still just the internal circles of the Aramaic and what was later written Greek portions of the Bible. There's no real true firsthand or even secondhand external accounts. So I would still be in the camp of, I don't believe a historical Jesus of Nazareth that is touted to be the Son of God exists.
Well, right, like the Son, and I'm okay in discussions about Jesus granting an actual historical Jesus as the baseline of where we end up when we whittle away all of the supernatural stuff. So in this discussion about like, well, was Jesus the Son of God? Well, no, we don't know that there's any proof, just like we don't have any proof that an actual historical Jesus existed. But what's the most basic level that we could get down to? The only thing that I could reasonably grant somebody is that a human being with the name Jesus, who was 100% human, who was murdered maybe, that is probably the furthest I can go. And then what? So what? You know, now you've got the burden of proof on your side. But, you know, I'm always pretty comfortable because we can't, in the same way that we don't have any proof that historical Jesus lived, we don't have any proof that he didn't. And again, it's not on the person not making the claim to have to prove it. But then again, we can still have that conversation as if that person did. And we don't have to kind of presuppose the non-existence for that conversation to continue. So I'm always comfortable. And, you know, I'm not arguing with you in a sense. I'm always comfortable granting a theist a human Jesus and then saying, okay, now convince me. So I never really had a problem with that.
Yeah, and in most discussions, I am willing to grant that as well. It doesn't give him divinity or, you know, magic. That's where the more expansive goalposts would need to reach.
Right, and the thing that I like about that actually is in reading the Gospels, as you continue on from start to finish, or from the one that came first to the one that came last, Jesus gets more supernatural, doesn't he? It's almost like, hey, the first story's not working. We gotta add some stuff, and we gotta make him sound a little bit more powerful. And by the time you get to John, you know, at least in the Gospels that the church was willing to keep, right? Let's not forget, Christians that are watching, that your forefathers got together and said, no, this stuff doesn't really suit our messaging, so we're just going to kind of cast it aside. In the ones that you end up with, even there are contradictions, there are dichotomies, and the only thing that you can kind of whittle it down to is, all right, we've got this person. But as you move on from Mark, Matthew, Luke, and of course, it's not the order that they're placed in, but you know, the order that they were written. As you move on, it just keeps getting, you know, the story keeps getting, it's like a game of telephone, you know, it just keeps getting more expansive and including more things. And by the time you get to the end, you end up with this deity that's all powerful, that is kind of not like what you started with. So I always found that fascinating, and I actually like giving the historical human Jesus so that we can have that conversation. Aaron, if I wanted to kick it over to you, you know, in your experience as a Mormon, how would this stuff have sat with you and in your congregation while you were a believer?
Well, I mean, of course, Jesus was a historical person, obviously, right? But there was no, I think Mormons are probably in the same camp as other Christians. The Bible is accepted as true. All the words in the Bible are accepted as true, even despite all the contradictions and the differences between the Gospels and things like that. So they're in the camp of most Christianity on what legs they stand on. But what's interesting is there's a really great book called Lost Christianities that I would encourage people to read by Bart Ehrman. It's fascinating on all the different versions of Christianity that actually existed in the first century. And it's my understanding the first mentions of Jesus actually written down were Paul's letters. Were there previous mentions of Jesus, or is Paul the first? Yeah. So Paul
was the first.
Paul's letters are the first, and this is like 20 years, I think, after Jesus supposedly died, is when we get the first written account of Jesus. I mean, think about if somebody today started writing.
Was it not
nonfiction.
40? Was it a little bit later than 20?
Was it 40? I thought it was like 50 AD or something.
Yeah, it was. So Paul was writing around 50, 55 is when he was starting. And then the Gospels weren't written until the 70s.
Yeah.
Interesting point, though, with Paul being the first one to mention a Jesus. Do you know that he doesn't actually mention anybody that knew Jesus while he walked around on earth?
I'm not surprised.
He only mentions Revelation and Scripture as where he gets his information from. And so our first instance of this Jesus character being mentioned in history comes from somebody that painstakingly makes the point to remove himself from any human source or any historical source, and instead places all of his knowledge on hallucinations and reading the Scriptures.
I actually study the actual historical record that we have. Oh man, it just seems real iffy. You know, that's like when somebody's writing some nonfiction today about somebody that lived 20 years ago, but there's no record of it between now and 20 years ago. I mean, today that would be really hard with the internet and all the records that we keep nowadays. But that's essentially what happened. And then other people kind of took it upon themselves to tell different stories. And I like what you're saying, Jimmy, about the different gospels. Why have a new gospel if you don't have something new to say, right? It's kind of like some people aren't going to like this analogy, but it's kind of like sequels in movies, right? Every movie has to do something more and has to ratchet up the tension and has to increase, you know, the powers. It's like kind of the Rambo. It's like Rambo 2 and Rambo 3. You know, the first Rambo, he's just out in the woods, you know, trying to stay safe. But in Rambo 3, now he's taking down helicopters, right? Yeah. It's like you got to up the ante. And I think that's the same thing with the Gospels. Is they had to slowly up the ante. Else, why would they have something to say?
Josh, where do you stand on that? Go ahead and weigh in.
Well, I typically find it very interesting that, you know, even in our conversation, you probably could not reference something I said 5 minutes ago in its exact entirety. So we're expected to believe that by secondhand sources, 30 to 50 years after the fact, we can remember verbatim what somebody had said. Yet we have no writing utensils or anything like that. But it does fit a very storied history when we look towards early Hebrew writings and scriptures of expanding the magnificence and glory of a story to fit a narrative, right? So that's where, I completely agree. Of course, it will continuously expand on itself. So then that way the book is a quote unquote good sell to gain followers, I suppose.
Well, and I'll tell you the Christian apologetic against that is that the Christians at that time, they were well-trained Jews, and they had this one particular tradition where they were really good at remembering oral traditions to the point where they could repeat them verbatim and write them down later. But I contest that in that there's no actual indication of that tradition being employed when Paul was writing or when the Gospels were being written. And also that inserting that information into Paul's writings or the Gospels is not all that compelling, considering that when we look at other historical sources for like other historical people, you actually have like a historical basis, like in evidence for them, as opposed to the Jesus figure of Paul, who all we have are already written scriptures that they're reinterpreting to find new information about the Messiah, and then Paul's hallucinations about said Savior.
Well, that sounds like a marvelous note to end on.
Yeah, in my view, it's like, what has better explanatory power? What has better explanatory power? There is a deity that loves us all and wants us to know him and have a personal relationship with him. And so he gave us these vague scriptures that aren't specific, that contradict each other, or these are all stories that we make up as humans to try and understand the world. I mean, which has better explanatory power? I know which side I lean on.
Yep. Hey, Josh, wonderful call. Thank you so much for giving us a call. Hey, Josh, are you the same Josh that gave us super chats?
Yes, I am.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I really appreciate that. But Josh, keep tuning in. Keep watching our show. Very good discussion. I hope the viewers get a lot out of that, but we are going to get moving. So I hope you have a fine Sunday, and the rest of us are going to go and enjoy our Sunday. So gentlemen, I had a really good time with both of you today. I had a lot of, this was a great conversation, great show. John, thank you for expanding, my knowledge of ancient culture and of ancient Christian doctrine. Aaron, thank you very much for bringing your perspective and your experience from the cult that you grew up in, and for joining us on that last call. That was wonderful. And so, folks, I just want to remind you, you can follow us on TikTok. You can watch us live Tuesdays at 3 p.m. Central and Thursdays at 7 p.m. Central. And you can also access that content on Patreon. So go follow us on Patreon. Don't forget to tune in to the Atheist Experience today at 4:30 p.m. Central, where the Talk Heathen hosts are taking over, and J. Mike was kidnapped and kind of not coming back until you tune into our show and tell us how great we are. So send us some super chats, continue to like and subscribe and share our channels, and keep tuning in. This is the part.
Today it's the Talk Heathen Experience.
That's right. Hey, not a bad title. Not a bad title. And gentlemen, this is the part where we give our love rings out. I'm sending my love rings out to my lovely wife. We are going to be celebrating our 5-year anniversary very soon. Who do you guys want to send out love rings to?
I want to send out love rings to all of the Christians that didn't get raptured and are now, suffering the consequences of their giving attitudes because they were going to get raptured. I feel really bad for them. So much love to them in this time of need.
Much love, Christians. Aaron, who are you going out to?
I know this is kind of cheesy, but I'm going to send it out to all of humanity. We're all brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
We're all here trying to make a living. We're all here trying to survive. Let's talk. Let's have conversations. Let's admit when things are made up and move on from there.
Yeah, absolutely. And remember, if you don't believe, well, this is your community. We appreciate you being here. But if you do believe, we don't hate you. We are just not convinced.
We want the truth. So watch Truth Wanted live Fridays at 7 p.m. Central. Call 512-991-9242 or visit tiny.cc/call TW.